church where they actually pray for one another and enjoy the benefits of fellowship. And paragraph 14 also gives a clear picture of if it's possible. So if the opportunity arises, if it's possible. And we know that it is practically impossible for every church that is a true church of the living God, or every local church present on earth, to actually enjoy physical fellowship with one another. It is practically impossible. For we currently in Nigeria, Abuja, to enjoy practical fellowship with a church in China. It is not, well, I would not say impossible per se, but it's highly improbable. So, that is not what the confession is talking about. The confession is talking about churches that have the advantage of being able to enjoy communion with one another. If your churches are closer, then the confession is saying, enjoy communion, seek out the advantage, seek out the opportunity to actually enjoy that fellowship with one another. It is not, if there's an opportunity, what it is saying that it's not just fine for us to have, we are praying for you as the only way to which we have communion with one another. Oh, we pray for you, or we are praying for you. That should be a given, and that's why it begins with that, and make sure it ends with you should have communion with one another. In practice, we should seek each other out and to have that kind of fellowship and to have that kind of communion. And very rarely in practice do we have this kind of communion if there's no mutual effort from both local churches. Very rarely. And so what the confession is actually driving at is that there should be that mutual effort to seek out the advantage of fellowship, because there's an advantage in it. And if you read paragraph 14 carefully, you see that it says where there is opportunity, we should be the ones to create that opportunity, actually. It just didn't put that onus that we should probably go out of our way. But it's a given because of the oneness and the love that a church of like mind in doctrine and faith should already share. It is assumed and it's implied that that opportunity should not be something that you have to cross the 7 seas to seek out. It shouldn't be so difficult to find a local church where you can have mutual enjoyment in prayer and also in communion. The confession here is building the idea that a local church, although is autonomous and fully independent, should not cherish that above all else and live in isolation. That is one of the things that it's saying. If you paid attention to what we have been looking at throughout the paragraphs, you will notice how, especially being Baptist, you notice how it has ensured we understand that the local church is a local church. It's an independent body. It is autonomous. It is self-ruling and self-governing. It is not governed by a synod of different churches put together, meaning it's not governed by an advisory council that is not within that local church. The final say is within the local church. But it's also telling us that we should not be seeking to have that isolation or to cherish that freedom so much that we do not have fellowship with like-minded churches. And that is what it's actually driving at. We should seek to have and join communion with churches where the opportunity arises. We should seek to have that. And the easiest way one of these things can happen in practice is if a local church plants its churches. That's one of the easiest ways it can happen. The kind of communion and fellowship that is being sought after would already be embedded in a church plant. If a local church is planting churches, this should be a given. But not only in church plant, but even if the church plant around you, even if the church plant around you is not a plant of your current local church, it shouldn't be an issue. But however, the easiest way to practice this is through church plants. If a local church is active in doing that which it is called to do in the Great Commission, to make disciples of men and to plant churches, fulfilling paragraph 14 would not be so much of a difficult task. It is when the churches are not in the know of one another, that is when paragraph 14 becomes a bit of a confusing task to fulfill. But it is a simple task. And it should not be something that brings such grief to us. And you see this in Jesus quelling this in Mark. Let's read Mark chapter 9, verse, just to draw an inference from Jesus' teaching to his disciples. Mark chapter 9, verse 38 to 40. Mark chapter 9, I read from verse 38. John said to him, "Teacher, we saw someone casting out demons in your name, and we tried to stop him, because he was not following us." But Jesus said, "Do not stop him, for no one who does a mighty work in my name will be able soon afterward to speak evil of me. For the one who is not against us is for us. For truly I say to you, whoever gives you a cup of water to drink because you belong to Christ will by no means lose his reward." What I'm trying to draw from the inference from that scripture is the confession is clear. You see, if we're already in like minds, in doctrine, in faith, then it should be easy. If they are not against us, then they are for us. Because we are not for our local church in a sense, we are for Christ. It's not a thing of, this is my church, we are for Christ. So if a particular local church is for Christ, it should not be a difficult thing to have communion with them. And because that is exactly what the disciples almost began. It was not part of our group. So why should you be casting out demons? Who gave you the power to be casting out demons or to even preach the gospel without being part of us? And Christ is like, even if he's not in this particular 12 group of disciples, he's not claiming to be an apostle. He's just preaching the gospel. He's just casting out demons in my name. And he's using my name. He's for me. And you should be for me. You're not really for your group of 12. You are for me. And that should be the prevailing idea when we go out and we find other churches that are like-minded. If they are like-minded, we should not front-load the problems or the differences, because there are differences, especially if the church plant or the local church close to you or within your own country is not a plant of yours. Even if it's a plant of yours, there'll still be differences anyway. But there will be more similarities than differences if it's a plant of yours. But there are differences. The point is, are the differences secondary? If they are not primary and you people share the same faith, you share the same faith, you share the same doctrine, the same church practice, almost the same church government, I see no reason why there should not be a communion there. And that is what Jesus Christ is saying. These people are for me. Why are you trying to create a division where there is no division? And usually in practice, to bring this home, that is what hinders us the most. When we have conversations with our friends about maybe churches that just began in the country or around, in the next 5 or 6 sentences of that conversation, you hear people say, but they don't do this, but they don't do that. And all the things they do, you just ignored. But they don't do this, but they don't do that. And you have a profile of almost every single, bringing it home, every single Reformed church in the country. There's a profile you have in your head of the differences that you share, not of the similarity. It doesn't come to mind. But the confession is actually against such teaching. It's actually against such practice. Because it is easy in our everyday life to be isolated. In fact, practicing isolation is easier than practicing this communion, as we'll find out. We ought to love one another. You see in 2 Corinthians chapter 8, from verse 1 to 4, when the church in Macedonia was given alms to the church, to the troubled saints in Jerusalem. That can only happen because there's communion, because there's fellowship. And that is the idea that the confession is bringing here. And I think even for the Baptist confession, this is even long. This chapter is longer than the Westminster Confession, because the Westminster stops at the fact that there's already a synod, so it's impossible to not even have communion. But the Baptist fathers already understand that isolation, that I'm a local church, I'm independent, can easily be a problem, regardless of the fact that it is true. It can easily be a problem that will not bring oneness, that will not bring unity among God's people. And so you have longer paragraphs in chapter 26 of the church in the Baptist Confession showing that you actually ought to pray for one another. You ought to seek the opportunity to take advantage of this fellowship, because there's an advantage to it. And the advantage is Christ died for them too. And we should be able to seek to have communion and fellowship with one another. I have one question. Why do you think churches in general don't enjoy this communion? What do you think is the problem? You're free to give whomsoever you like. So, and I have a second question, so maybe somebody can be thinking on that. The second question is, in our own setting, what can we do to improve it? That's if it already exists. And if you don't think it exists, what can you do to bring it to existence? So that's the second question, but the first question. You can be thinking on the second question.
I think based on the first question, I think it's ignorance of the scriptures.
Ignorance of the scriptures, okay. Do you care to explain?
Okay, in my own light, when you check even from the latter days of the apostles, especially Apostle Paul, you could see the harmony in the body of Christ. Apostle Paul could go to any of the churches, still teach, preach, talk to people, without these divisions of like we're gisting with the Kisamson. Today, you're calling somebody to another church. Some people have to run a profile background on his doctrine and stuff like that because there's a division today. So, but when you really check, in those days, they have this raw understanding on how fellowship within the body of Christ should be. So, okay. And a lot of that is missing today.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Your contribution is actually very sound, but it would have been more sound if this was the first century. But it's not. And that's why in my teaching I've actually been saying of like mind, like faith and doctrine. There are a lot of churches now that are not of like mind, faith and doctrine. So it will be difficult to have communion with such churches. That's one. Two, to counter your good suggestion, most of the churches that Apostle Paul had communion, he planted them. But there are some he didn't plant. But he planted them. So you see how easier it is to. So, but in our own terms, yeah, most of the churches we didn't plant each other. So, what do you think is the difference? Good one, but I think I need more.
I think sometimes it's not malicious. It's just the problems, the cares of this world. So to then partly answer your second question, it's a deliberateness about it, just being deliberate. Just like anything in your life, if you are not deliberate about things, they never happen.
Thank you for the first one. I think that fact that it's, even in our own personal lives, how many people really just make friends? We like our aloneness, so it's not like it is malicious. Sometimes it can be, but we'll get to that. You will see when it can be in paragraph 15. But to the second question, that deliberateness, I want to see practicality. That's just a principle. How can it be in practical? Thank you for the answer, but practicality, how can we improve this? What do you think we can do?
Sorry, to the first one, I think you already gave a hint to the answer when you were teaching, front-loading our differences. Sometimes they are necessary, and other times they are not. So I think that's a challenge. How can we practically enhance such relationship or build one if it doesn't exist? I think if it's already existing, it can be enhanced. I think that is easier, and that means we can have conferences together. We can, invite each other to each other's elders or pastors to preach in churches. We can actively pray for each other. But if it's not existing, then we'll go back to what Bro Ole said. We have to be deliberate to create one. Yes, there are churches that are very different from us in doctrine. There are those that are not so far away. And when I say from us, I think we should be talking about the Bible, not just from us. We should be saying those whose doctrine are not far from scriptures. Those ones we can have relationship with that are defined, so that we're not overstepping our bounds or going to places with them that we ought not to go to.
Okay. Thank you, Pastor. You have some Joshua, then you. No, it's not a time for Q. I'm the one asking the questions. You wait.
Just to add to what said for the second point, I think we can get to the point where, as different churches with like minds and faith and doctrine, we can have a working document, right? We can have something we can fall back on to say this is how we want to have communion with ourselves, right? So at every point you have something to look at that guides you, right? It's not like the legalistic kind of way, but I mean, because I understand the conferences thing and it's all, but if we can plan together, not the nitty-gritties of the planning, but a holistic form of planning of how we can do the year, how we can do looking out to plant more churches, just have a kind of document that can help us streamline what we want to do to each other.
Okay. One more. You want to say a question, right? It's a comment or a question. You're not sure.
No, I'm sure.
Please give Bra Wale the microphone first. Okay, him, then Bra Wale, then you.
So, pardon me, I'm presuming that the imagery thing even before the question you're asking.
Okay.
So, well, sorry guys, I think
I have an image in my head.
the answer that I'm hearing is on the presumptions that people that are here understand what you're talking about. So that's where I have a disconnect. So I'm just saying, so if I'm answering, how can we make it better? I'm saying, okay, what should it be? That's why I said, can I ask that question now or not?
We'll take it at the end of this. Okay.
I just remembered that I've heard many times over the years people refer to the Zambians, that one of the things that the elders deliberately cultivate is the friendship and then the fraternal between the pastors. So the pastors meet regularly and they are friends. And out of that friendship, all these other things can easily flow.
So, still have something to say? Okay. Quickly, please.
Sorry, I want to bring this practical to our situation in Abuja here. So, this is actually a difficult thing to say, but I just want to bring it out.
Hope it's not divisive.
No, it should not. So, with the current situation in our sister church in Abuja here, that we're supposed to have this communion and fellowship with, and you know the reality, you know what has happened.
I don't.
Okay, you don't. Okay, let's say.
I don't.
Okay, then let me just split it. Some of our members left this church and they're in the other church. Okay, so let's just say some of the members,
like I said,
okay,
I don't.
maybe
I don't
that's
know.
what I'm saying. I wanted to bring it. It's a hard thing to talk about.
Go on.
Yes, please.
Go on.
So,
It's fine.
so let's say we're in a marriage, and someone
Please say,
divorced.
don't use allegories. Just say what is in.
I think we should have this in our membership class so we can talk about these hard things. Because it's difficult for you and somebody to have grudges in one church, and you are meeting that same person in that church, that you've not settled your scores. Thank you. Okay.
Okay. There are no grudges.
Okay, so I think these are some of the things that will make these things difficult, even for the pastor and for even other members.
Okay. Thank you. Just to, it's good. Good suggestion. Just to harmonize everything everyone said, I think one of the easiest ways to be deliberate, and every time the churches, and I've noticed this, especially when it is not a church plant of your church, we don't even see eye to eye on planning our church calendar. So once your calendar is planned, it's like you're backpedaling on that deliberateness to do something with that church every time. Every year, you've already planned your church calendar without telling anybody. There are more than 11 churches of like mind in Nigeria currently, and nobody knows your plan for the year. And the 11 don't even know each other's plans. So it's impossible to say you're going to enjoy conference. You are just going to hear, a month to the time, we want to do conference. So that's basically that's where the deliberateness comes in your church calendar and also in friendship. And the Lord help and to bring that unity, especially in friendship among the elders, deacons, and even members of like-minded churches. Paragraph 15. Paragraph 15 bringing the idea that in the event of conflict, churches that have already been in communion should form an advisory council to deliberate on the issue. That's if the problem has become an issue almost out of hands for the local church. That's what paragraph 15 is about. All those censures you see there, that's like consequences or imposition of different, what will I call it, punishments on church members who are in error or church councils who are in error. The whole point that paragraph 15 is trying to make is there should be an advisory council of some sort among churches. It may be consisting of the deacons of every church or the elders of every church. But there should be of some sort, something among these churches. And if in the event where there's a problem in the church, and it's specific on the problem, it should be on matters of doctrine or administration. And it's clear on that, because there's also some dangers in this. We'll get to it, but doctrine and administration, and it's clear. You see doctrine from Acts. If we went back to the council at Jerusalem, you see administration in Macedonia. They needed food, they needed money, they needed things. It's like benevolence. And you see administration also with Paul to the Corinthian church, to the guy who was sleeping with his wife. And even though Paul is not an advisory council in himself, being an apostle, telling them what to do. But, however, the idea that the fathers are trying to get here is that if a particular local church, and this is practical, is already getting out of hand with a particular problem, all the other local churches should not say, we are Baptists. We cannot superimpose any form of sanctions on this church. We are Baptists. Of course, if this was a Presbyterian form, the synod can. But this is not Presbyterianism. This is the Baptist system. And the other churches should not say we are Baptists. The church can burn. The church can die. It's not our business. They should be able to settle it within themselves. And that's why paragraph 15 comes after paragraph 14, because if there is no communion and fellowship, this cannot work. If I've not been your friend, I cannot tell you my problem. And all you hear is the variation of the problem because of gossip and slander, but you will never hear the real thing. Because I won't tell you. You just hear from this person, and that's variation. That's not the truth that you know. But it's saying that they should form a council. And there are some of them, I think in America, like the Southern Baptist Convention. And we can form one if we want to. But it's not really that you must form a council and have a document, like a CAC document. But there should just be something among churches where, in the event where there's a problem on doctrine and administration, it's getting out of hand in a local church, these people who are filled with the Holy Spirit can meet and give advice. Now, this advice is not final. The local church authority can still decide to ignore that advice or take it. Because the authority for administration is in the hands of the local church, as we've learned. But we are not all wise. And God and Christ is the one that is all wise and all knowing. And Christ is the one that is planting his churches. And so wisdom is not located fully here or anywhere, but among his churches are of like mind and filled with the Spirit. You should be able to tell your problems, and you should be able to be humble enough to submit if it is a godly advice that the council has come up with, especially in matters of doctrine. We expect that to be godly advice. In matters of administration, we expect also that to be a godly advice. We should be humble enough as a local church to submit to that and take that advice. However, you see, this has been an issue because this can quickly metamorphose into something else. There should be communion and there should be this advisory council. But with the way humans are wired, it can easily metamorphose into something. And that's why the confession is clear: doctrine, administration. Doctrine, administration. There can be a blurring of the lines where church members here or church members somewhere are now having counseling sessions with elders somewhere else. Oh, because we are. So that's a blurring of the line. That's a That's a problem that this can cause. And when it is not a matter of doctrine of administration, if we are not defining what that doctrine and administration is, a lot of things will fall under the administration part. A lot of the problems that this can create will fall under that administration, where you can just tell yourself that I prefer this pastor more in this advisory council. I think I need him to do my you know? Well, I'm not even saying case. Maybe this is not even a matter of conflict now. You can just say, oh, I think I need him to do my marriage counseling. That's weird. And that is not what the council should be for. It should be, especially in matters of doctrine, administration, we should have the council, and in matters of conflict. That's where they come in. In the matter of the daily run, if there's no conflict, they are not needed. The local church leadership is fine. They are not needed. That's just the truth. That council is not needed, especially in matters of conflict. It's not needed if the church is fine. It is needed for practical communion and enjoying fellowship with one another. But to start dictating how the church or the local church should be run, especially when it is not even giving an advice, is a problem. But that is what paragraph 15 is about. It's still saying that all wisdom is not dominated in a local church. As long as there are local churches around, and then there's a conflict in the church that is almost bringing that church to nothing, deteriorating it, they should be able to submit to a body, an advisory council of some sort, with churches of like mind, churches that are biblical and will actually give you biblical advice. So that is paragraph. I have some application, but let us take all the questions. I know there are a lot, so let's go. 1, 2, 3. Let me answer Pastor Solomon's questions first before we start taking. Pastor Solomon's question is about what should this communion look like? So what it should look like is, in practical terms, this church is Trinity Baptist Church, Abuja. This is a local church. This is a Reformed Baptist local church. Sovereign Grace Community Church, Abuja, is a Reformed Baptist local church, separate, autonomous. There should be some form of communion between this church and that church. It should not be in isolation. However frequent that communion would be, we don't know, but it should exist. Be it once a year, twice a year, every quarter, depending on however we want that communion should be. But paragraph 14 is saying there should be a communion that starts from praying from one another, but ends in actual fellowship. There should be actual fellowship, physical, not just I'm praying for you, and then that's it. There should be actually a physical fellowship between this church and that church. We should seek the opportunity. That's the imagery. Does it answer your question?
Oh, in some way. I mean, it does because that then leaves room for what that communion is to be assumed, right? I think if you look at, can we go to 14 a little bit?
And that's why he said conferences.
No, I mean the person who is okay, exactly. Sorry, I was going to who is projecting. If you look at it,
paragraph 14,
it's saying here that you should pray for one another deliberately. Of course, you can't pray for one another if you don't know what the church, what their prayer needs are. You can pray more generically, so you need to know what their prayer needs are. It's saying that you should seek to further within the bounds of your own calling. Those are within your axis. I'm asking that, what does this look like, right? So that, I mean, I don't know, you from your preparation, what does this look like? So that when we can say, okay, we're now defaulting. Because if we then see, is it that the churches themselves will now define their bounds, right? What does it look like?
What it looks like is what everyone has given an example of. But let me talk, and then maybe you can add to it. What it looks like in practicality is conferences. You can plan things together that bring communion, and we can enjoy the giftings that they have. We can also share in it. Maybe someone there who is gifted at preaching may preach in that conference. Someone here who's gifted at preaching may preach in that same conference. And that is them enjoying communion in the benefits and the giftings that the Lord has blessed this church with. So that's one way. There are many other ways. Brother Wole, please.
An analogy that comes to mind is we are children of the same father. And my father is always so interested that we have relationships. We, his children, we all grown up, we're all separate, independent, but he wants us to be related. And he's always asking questions, do you call, do you meet? So the point is, wherever I am with my siblings now, I can always do better. You see what I mean? There can always be a deliberateness. There's always that intention to be drawing closer. And I think that's really the imagery that we want to draw closer. And my comment, I'll just take it at the same time, is that you just said there are 11 now. And I was looking 10 years ago, there were only like 2. In 10 years, I am sure in Abuja alone, there will probably be like 10 churches. So if we don't start thinking around it now and start creating structures, the problem will really increase. So we really need to start thinking through. We would have many. How do we create relations? Stand the test of time.
So, Joshua, then you have a question now. I'm scared of your question. Go on.
Please, can you help me with section 15?
Yes.
So I want to understand, I think from what you said, I'm trying to picture the practical part of it, but it's still sounding abstract in my head. On the part of the council, I want to read something. So you said, in the cases of difficulty or differences, either in point of doctrine or administration, this is what I want some clarification on the practical of what the scenario will look like. On the part where it says, or any member or members of any church are injured. So that counsel can be brought up when a member is injured. So what does it look like? So when we